Hi there. So I want to talk about command and control versus the social governance system. When I say command and control, it refers to organizational structure, how we structure our activities as groups. So the oldest structure is probably command and control. It's probably as old as mankind itself. When you get a strong person leading a group of people, that's command and control. And so the military structures, right back through Egyptian and ancient times in Rome, was a command and control structure. Today, our corporations have mimicked that because it was very effective throughout time. It has its limits, and we'll talk about that, but it served us well. The problem, though, is that today we're living in a world that is going in complexity, exponential growth and complexity. And the command and control model does not fit. It does not function well in extremely complex environments. And so we're going to have to either move away from this or fail as a civilization. That's pretty clear. It's on the table. So let's talk about that a bit. So command and control is dependent on strong leadership. You have this pyramidal structure, and at the top you have the president, the CEO, or whatever. And what happens over time is that if that leadership changes and you get a weak leader, an incompetent leader, well, then the whole structure fails because of the command and control nature. Everybody follows orders up through the pyramid structure. So that's a very big failing in the system. The other thing is that the limit of the system, of that organizational structure, is the leader. If you have a brilliant leader, it works, but ultimately a brilliant leader is limited when you get into extremely complex environments. What sole individual can master everything, and that person can micromanage and kill the organizational structure in terms of competitiveness. So the potential, the absolute potential we can put on a command and control structure is the full potential of that leader realizing their potential through the organization. When you have a collaborative structure, we'll get into a little more detail, is one where the associated components of that structure have more autonomy. They have more liberty to do what they want. And if properly trained and given direction, that structure outperforms a command and control structure hands down every time. That's been proven time and time again. So in the world of business, it's the same thing. In the world of business, we have what we've been putting in place in the IT sector, which is agile management, which follows a more collaborative process, a more empowering process for the people engaged. And I've seen improvements of 25% in terms of productivity. And that excludes the actual improvement of the well-being of the people in that structure also. It's also much healthier. So the two aren't comparable as soon as you're dealing with complex environments. The limit of the potential of a self-organizing group, of a collaborative structure, is the sum of the potential of all the individuals. And that's why it's far more powerful than a strong command and control structure. So the structure proposed through the social governance system is one where we maintain a command and control, but it becomes lightened, very, very lightened. It's still there, and it should be there where the leadership assimilates and understands what the will of the group is and the will of the environment in terms of what the environment conditions are, expressing that so the group can come to a common understanding. And that component of the structure there is just to help create a vision for the whole. But after that, then you're looking at full decentralization in terms of an issue pops up, a group forms, a group of people who are interested in resolving the issues, a people of subject matter experts. This brings many more people to the fray in terms of addressing an issue. It allows them the liberty to come up and resolve and work it out. Far more powerful than the government bureaucracies we have today, and we see them not accomplishing very much because they're command and control, but also because they have very, very weak leadership in those command and control structures in government. It's horrible. So when I talk about the structure within the social governance system, when you look at the form it takes, it resembles what we see in nature, such as its biomimicry. As much as possible, those most influential and powerful things we find have already evolved through nature. And so we're always better off mimicking nature whenever we want to put something in place and question, is there something already out there that we can contemplate, look at, and then follow that pattern. and it tends to be a far better solution in life. So command and control is very dangerous, especially as we get more powerful as a civilization. We're getting more complex environment where the potential of the leader can't match the complexity that's in the environment. All of the things are arriving. If you take any one of the world leaders right now and try and look at what's happening in the world, the vastness of the issues, well, none of them can master it. It's absolutely impossible. And so what happens though is that if you elect a poor leader, and when you look across the Western world right now, it'll make you cry, but the leadership is absolutely pathetic. And then you match that up to the growing complexity we have in the world, and it's just a recipe for disaster. So when you get those poor leaders in place, they panic and they tend to start micromanaging. And when somebody micromanages in a command and control structure, what happens is you lose the potential of all the individuals. They all become basically robots. The speed of communication goes down drastically. Issue resolution goes down drastically. Creativity gets absolutely destroyed. And that's why socialism, fascism, and communism, all the isms, anything that involves any dictatorship or tyranny, elements of that creates a society that doesn't progress. If you go around the planet, you look at the freest societies, the ones that bring freedom and allow people to do what they need to do are the ones that progress the fastest and the best. Unfortunately, what we're seeing in the world in the last 50 years is a regression. We're seeing politicians talking about collaboration, politicians talking about freedom, but when we look at their actions, well, it's this old saying, how do you know a politician is lying? Well, his lips are moving. And in the actions, we see nothing but more police states being imposed, security measures imposed, and this is tightening up, and we even see freedom of speech being taken away gradually as we move along. And this is guaranteed, given the increased complexity of our world, to destroy our civilization. There's no doubt in my mind. So our current political system is mimicking 100% of command and control structure. Our government structures are all based on command and control. Our police force, our military all work under a command and control structure. That wasn't always the case. In the United States, you had sheriffs who were voted in by the people. Well, that's a decentralized setup with a check and balance by the people and their sheriffs. I'm in Canada, and we have these large provincial police forces and federal police forces in a total command and control structure. So as soon as the government makes a dictate, well, the police are paid by their government, and they now see themselves as an arm of government. And once again, that gives an increased centralization of power, which then leads to vast, very large mistakes in life. The history of command and control made sense because we had large geographic dispersion of people, and so you didn't have the tools to go into a fully collaborative setup. It's very difficult. And you also perhaps didn't have the people trained, and centralized figures with higher training were capable. But today, training information is available to everybody, and we have the tech. And like I was saying, when you talk about those organizations that are successful today, such as those moving towards an agile setup, most of your large tech companies have achieved what they have by freeing up their people and letting them work in an agile fashion with an overall directive, which has made them far more powerful than any other industry at the moment. And you look at perhaps one of the most successful companies in the United States today, Tesla, which is headed by a brilliant man named Elon Musk. Well, he made a dictate to his employees a few years ago and said, listen, the fastest point of communication is directly between those 2 points. Do not go through a command and control hierarchy to resolve an issue. Go point to point. If anybody wants to block that and demand that people pass through a hierarchy, well, they're free to work elsewhere. It's basically the message he gave them. And you see Tesla's evolving and innovating at a rate that's far greater in terms of solving problems than any other the behemoths in North America that are really strongly focused on their command and control structure. And once again, we have examples around us of the failing of that. We have these para-government organizations such as the World Health Organization, which is an elected body. It's an appointed body. It's at the international level. And then in each government, you have a health body. And they set them up in a command and control structure so that when you have a pandemic, they dictate from the top what's going down, then it cascades. And then we've watched as they've mandated certain procedures to health professionals. So these are doctors who might have 25, 30 years fighting disease in their areas. They understand how to deal with this stuff, but now they're being dictated to on how they're going to treat patients. And in some cases, they're seeing disastrous results. And this comes in from their health organization, the command and control structure. There have been those who've been brave enough to break away. Great results in terms of innovation, as usual, when you have a free setup where people are allowed to do their jobs and only be given a vision of what's going on or an understanding of what the dangers might be. But you let them do their jobs, that's what they're trained for. And so this has been a totally catastrophic failure, this command and control system over the World Health Organization's. It's just abysmal. And then when you start jumping into the leadership and evaluating the leadership of these organizations, well, then you see why it's in a bad state of affairs. So one of the reasons the free market system was so powerful at generating prosperity in the United States was for that reason. People were free to collaborate. If somebody came up with a really good idea, then others were free to copy it. If somebody came up then with a better idea, then that idea got copied by others. It wasn't dictated by one how all would operate. That's what you would see in feudal societies and tyrannical societies, and that's why they don't develop. The creativity of the human being is lost, and the expertise of the human being in a given situation is wasted because you're micromanaging the heck out of your society. And that's why free market is so important, and freedom is so important, and making sure that that is in the organizational structure you're using to govern your society. So the future of the world, if we don't change things, is for a one world government, they call a new world order, which is a complete command and control. I mean, they're really looking at removing everybody's rights and really dictating from a quasi, they view it as a scientific structure to make better decisions for humanity. But we'll have another talk about scientific dictatorships and how that works out. But the point is that they're moving in the opposite direction. There's a concerted effort across the globe right now by people with very deep pockets to move us in a structure that goes counter freedom, counter liberty. And from just a pragmatic management perspective in terms of managing our society, it is absolutely the wrong solution for us. It's a solution that will only bring our demise. If we want a better world in the future, we're going to have a structure that's going to allow us to get into better balance between each other and our environment. And the only route for that is freedom. So the success for humanity in the future is really to ensure that we move away from command and control and adopt collaborative systems, collaborative organizational structures. And that's part of what the social governance system is about. We're bringing in standard management methodologies into the application, but the application being open source, allowing transparency. Right now we see with the tech giants being controlled, also with governments quasi-controlled, that they're infringing on freedom and they're starting to censor stuff. That's totally wrong. That's one of the reasons why this initiative has to be open source. We need to have many eyes on the ball and allow a platform for people to exchange and come to solutions. So we need an organizational structure and a governing system that allows people to understand the information and make free, independent decisions. It's not up to leadership to dictate. That's a horrible system. In a complex world, it doesn't work. If you have thousands, tens of thousands, or hundreds of thousands of trained medical professionals, and then they're all mandated to function and prescribe drugs in the exact same way without taking their context and using their brains, well, then you've just made them absolutely useless. You can replace them all with a robot. That's clear. And what I'm seeing is that the innovation is worth far more than any robots. There's places for robots in society, but to take your trained professionals and then put a micromanaging system above them is an absolute waste of potential, absolute waste. And we're seeing more and more of that through these structures that are being put in place. And I take the medical field as one example. It's true in banking, it's true in military, it's true in security. We're seeing it all over the place. And we're also seeing the success of those who decentralize and go for collaborative systems. They far exceed every time the command and control structure. So if you want to help us make a better world, thanks for listening. Please subscribe, please share. All right, thank you.